Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Student Sparks podcast, where naturopathy meets neuroscience. I'm Parker Malev, the naturopath.
And I'm Emma Johnson, the neuroscientist. Join us on this adventure as we delve into the depths of nutrition, nature, medicine, and the mind,
where every insight sparks discussion and debate.
Welcome back, everyone. It's been a hot minute. Parker and I, as you probably know, are both in school, and we also both have basically full-time jobs this summer. So we've been really, really busy, but I found the perfect time to record a podcast. Well, we found the perfect time to record a podcast when Parker just started organic chemistry, and I'm in my finals week. The perfect time!
I give some backdrop on this class I'm taking real quick, please.
Yeah.
Just like a tad of lore. I haven't taken general chemistry yet. And my school, because they didn't have a professor that was available to teach chemistry at the same time as the organic chemistry class, because other people needed the organic chemistry, they're forcing me to take organic without general or advanced general. And oh, it's the worst. It's the worst.
That's actually insane.
Anywho, like they're assuming I've already mastered orbitals stuff.
Oh my gosh, that I didn't. Orbitals are really annoying to like figure out.
They're so much harder than you would think, because it's just like, oh, okay, you start with 2, and then they go up from there, and then it's S and a couple P's and whatever, but then you get hybrids, and then you get the pi and the sigma bonds and anyways.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
So we're busy. We have plenty of excuses for that. And
yeah, all of our excuses. We promise we didn't just abandon the podcast. Well, almost. We did kind of a little bit, but we're back, and that's what's important. And today we're going to be covering a little bit of a heavier topic because I have sort of an anecdote that I want to walk through with Parker, and we're just going to talk about what it means. So in one of my classes, we're reading this book. It's called The Spirit Catches You and You Fall Down. And it follows a family, the Lee family, and they are from, I believe, Laos. I'll have to double check that because I don't have the notes in front of me because I want to really focus more on like the commentary behind it instead of the facts about the book. And so they have a lot of Western Eastern. Sometimes I forget my easts and wests. So you'll see me go like
left and right, east and west.
East, west. So they have a lot of Eastern medicine practices. So they come to America with their daughter, Lia, and she has severe epilepsy. So she's diagnosed with severe epilepsy, and she has to get put on some really heavy medications. And the family is really struggling with that because, again, they come from an area where modern medicine is just not something they've ever really heard of. So this isn't just them coming in and being like, oh, I don't believe in this stuff. Like, this is ridiculous. They genuinely have not heard of it. And if somebody, I think I'm going to pause the story right here to talk about the first big topic is Americans, especially in medicine, have a hard time just wrapping their head around the fact that people don't understand. Like, we've been taught since we were little about atoms and germs and all these kinds of things. And they might have as well, because there are a lot of educated people from other countries. But a lot of the times, the people that are coming here as immigrants don't have this formal education because they're fleeing a country and they were poor or on the run or in hiding, and they're coming as refugees. So they don't have the background to be able to understand what doctors are saying, especially when English isn't their first language. And they're from Laos, so not a lot of people speak the language that they need to in order to communicate with these people. So this isn't like they're coming in and they're like, oh, I don't believe in all of this. Like, this is just ridiculous. This is genuinely like a disconnect in their understanding that we just don't breach that well because they come in and we just assume that they will acclimate to every single part of our culture, especially medicine. Like, medicine is a big one. We're just like, oh, now you need to start taking Tamiflu. Now you need to start taking Dayquil. And that's just not something in their vocabulary at all.
Yeah, there's a really, really big divide between Americans and other countries in a lot of respects, but specifically in medicine. Americans lack the perspective that health can come from any direction.
Mm-hmm.
Mental, physical, spiritual, and there are, some more far out there ideas and such, but there's a lot of concepts that are able to help someone, even though it's not coming in a pill bottle.
Yeah.
So just because you were raised using ibuprofen every day, which is not don't get me wrong, I pop ibuprofen like it's Tic Tacs. But there are other things that other countries have been doing for way, way longer than what America has had as the Western medicine system that work for them. They've been fine. This is just what they had. This is what they grew up with versus what us in America grew up with. And there are good and bad to both. If you try to come in, if a patient were to come in your office and say, I'm from Laos, I use this is how I eat every day. If we're looking at it from a nutrition perspective, if you were to talk to this person from Laos and try to say, all right, we're going to switch your diet from your traditional Eastern Asian diet to have some hamburgers and steaks and
Salads.
if you're switching, if you're giving somebody dietary recommendations based off of your culture and not theirs, the likelihood that they're going to stick with it and that it's actually going to do anything good for them is not as likely as what people think. So there's a disconnect between culture and medicine that Americans just don't get.
Yeah.
And I didn't get it for a while either.
That totally leads into the next part of the story is she was prescribed her medication and her parents weren't really informed about what the medication is, what it does, what it's going to do to help her. And they didn't see immediate benefits, but they had seen slow benefits from what they were doing, which they believe that there was some sort of demon possessing her. So their goal was to try to get rid of the demon that was possessing her. And a lot of people in America don't believe in demons, which is a valid take. And it's more metaphysical. It's not scientifical. It's not physical. So we can't study that. So it's hard to say whether or not that is true. But right now, a lot of medicine's understanding is that's not the case. Epilepsy comes from issues with the nervous system and the brain. But they didn't see an immediate effect from the medication. So they stopped giving her the medicine. And she continued to get worse. And so when they brought her back to the doctor assumed that, oh, they must not be giving her the medication because she's getting worse. She's not getting better from this medication. And instead of working with the family to try to find a way to make the medication work, he basically just said, no, you have to be giving her this medication. I'm going to make a nurse come to your house and make sure you give her the medication and don't do your Eastern medicine practices like coin rubbing and trying to get rid of the demons and in other ways. So they sent a nurse to her house and they were forcing her to take the medication, and she did start getting better. But when she started getting better, the family thought it was probably from their practices. So they stopped giving her the medication again, and she got worse again, and she had to go back to the doctor. And he decided that Leah, the little girl, was not in a suitable household. So they took her away and they put her through Child Protective Services. She went through some really traumatic things when she was put in foster care. The first place she was in was they would like strap her into a stroller seat to keep her from being active. And then also when she had her epileptic seizures, which in the book, yes, it can be good to restrain people during epileptic seizures, but the way that it was described, it also seemed like when she was just overactive, they would strap her in to get her to stop running around and jittering and all that kind of stuff, which obviously there's going to be anxiety from being pulled away from your family, and forcing you to be strapped into a seat is not helping. But she was taking the medicine more regularly while she was there, but her seizures were still bad. So she went into a foster care family, and this foster care family was much better than the organization that she was in before, like the system. And they had done adoptions before, they had done fostering before, so they really knew how to work with her. They would sleep with her because she was so anxious not being with her parents, and because her seizures were getting worse again, even though she was taking the medication. And they also connected her with a specialist in epileptic seizures, and somebody who had engaged with other families from Laos, because the area that this story is, this is an actual historic story. This is not just a made up thing, which I feel like I probably should have prefaced, but now I'm saying it. In the area that this family was, there were a lot of families from Eastern Asia, North, South, East. Yeah, East Asia. I totally lost my train of thought. Oh, so they got her connected with a specialist. She was still getting worse. So I'm going to pause there again, and we're going to go back and we're going to talk about the situation that unfolded. And then I'll give Parker a chance to talk about it as well. So just a reminder, she goes back to the doctor. They take her from her family. I'm going to stop there because that is a huge thing up front. The family was having a hard time giving her the medication because they didn't fully understand our medical practices. And so they put her in Child Protective Services. And she is young. She is like 2 or 3 throughout the story. And she becomes super anxious. And this is something in the book, the woman who wrote the book interviewed the doctor that Lia had and everything. And he talks about how he went back and forth because he wasn't sure what was best for her. And I think, one, that's a very good thing, that he has this sort of moral dilemma of, do I keep her with her family, or do I take her away so that she can take the medicine? But there's an in-between there that I feel like we sort of see it as this dichotomy is parents are either fully bad for a child or they're fully good for a child. But there is an in-between of teaching the parents and helping the parents learn what the medication is going to do for Lia, and working with them with their medical and cultural practices. We see it as, oh, they are bad for Lia because they are not giving her the medication all the time unless there is a nurse there making sure that happens. But there are other ways to work with a family to try to get the child the medication they need before uprooting the family and taking Lia away, which hits on another issue with the medical system, is we don't think about how things will impact people in a non-physical and medical way. Because yes, Lia might be able to now take her medication, but she is now stripped from her family at a young age where she doesn't understand why. And that can be worse on her mental health, which can also affect her physical health. And as we talked about, her seizures continue to get worse. And obviously, we can't do any sort of imaging to see if the seizures got worse for another reason. But the fact that they got drastically worse when she was ripped from her family, and the fact that this is a neurological disorder that can also be affected by severe trauma and stress, feels like something that the doctor probably needs to take into account. And that's something that we often disregard in medicine, is that the body is not just the physical. Obviously, mental is caused by physiology, but when we're thinking about more like macro physical, the body is not just the physical symptoms that you give off. It is also the mental symptoms and the emotional symptoms. And we tend to disregard that in modern medicine. And we disregard the culture that a child was brought up in. We think that we know what's best for a child, and that might be true in the physical sense, but it's not necessarily true in the mental sense.
So there's a huge concept within naturopathy, and almost all forms of alternative medicine have this concept, but naturopaths specifically, one of the oaths that they take is the doctor as teacher. So there's a lot of naturopaths that will actually choose to be professors in some way, shape, or form. They'll hold classes on weekends, stuff like that. It's an actual part of the job is you have to take on some form of education. So whether you implement that into your practice, or if you do the thing, like I said, with classes, or become a professor of some kind somewhere, that's fulfilling that part of the oath. And it bothers me a little bit when we see this extreme example of a child getting ripped from their family because the doctor couldn't take a minute to say, hey, this medication is here for this reason. If you would like to continue what you're doing, let's monitor it together. Let's make sure she's safe. And then, at some point, if we decide you want to try something else, I'm here. We'll work through it, we'll go through it. And then, I don't know, to give a child that much trauma because the parents just didn't understand what was going on. that's Oh, that scares me. That really scares me. How often do you think it happens otherwise?
Yeah, it was really common. Like, this book didn't just talk about this family. It talked about tons of other families from the same area. And this was something that they had all dealt with. They all had a fear of doctors and medicine because they were genuinely just racist towards these people. They thought of them as uneducated and not able to understand modern medicine, and we have to force them to take the medications they need to.
Mm-hmm. And that's even with the undereducated people of America, too. This is not just saying, oh, these underprivileged countries have people who don't understand our form of medicine. It's anybody who has not learned about it explicitly. And why would you unless you get sick, right? If you're healthy, you don't need to look this stuff up.
Right.
Until something happens, and then you're put in a situation where, oh no, my newborn child has epilepsy. What does that mean? So it's any just person that hasn't dealt with that before. It's like any sort of disadvantage like that. If a practitioner is not willing to sit down and educate, then they're going to ruin this person's life.
Yeah, you don't teach education to uneducated people by forcing them.
Yeah, that's not going to teach them anything.
Like, that's
if they're
not
willing to do anything, then sure. But if they're scared, if they don't know what's going on, and then they're why would you? Okay,
Right.
All right. So sorry, this heats me up a little bit. If somebody were to come to me and say, what you're doing is bad, change it right now, and they don't tell me why, I'm going to sit there and go, okay.
And not change anything. Because of course.
And not change anything, right.
Right. Because, yeah, you're operating on different foundations, different beliefs that stem from a culture that is so ingrained within you. You have to sort of break down these ideas or work with them. You can't just say, this is what you have to do to your child that they've seen people go into hospitals, come out, take the medications, and die. Of course, you're going to be skeptical. And And this
it can go either way too.
Right,
That's the other thing is most people are like, oh, modern medicine's bad because so many people die. And then the other side says, oh, alternative medicine is bad because it keeps people from doing the other therapies that they need, per se. Either way, it's still kind of an awful thing to just say you're wrong without and here's why.
Right.
And gently too.
Yes, gently. And this sort of leads into the story going more uphill. They find a specialist, like I mentioned. The foster family helps the child and the family find a specialist. And they get a specialist. And this specialist, their goal is to teach the Lee family what they need to do to take care of Lia. So this is when we actually start to see a difference, is Lia starts taking the medication. The specialist is working with the Lee family to work and figure out how the medication works. They teach them about what the medication does. They find a better medication for Lia that works better because they're actually a specialist. They've treated children with epilepsy before. And Lia is finally able to go home and she gets way better. That's sort of where I'm going to end the story. This story is really long. Well, it's not super long, but like this is just one part. But I think that I want to end there because it showcases the way things should be it sort of shows the way that things should have gone from the beginning. Is we're working to find the best doctor for the child and not trying to force them to go to a doctor that they don't agree with or are doing well with. And then we work with the family to find the best treatment, to find the best way to educate and help them understand what Leah needs and why she needs the medication. Instead of saying she just needs this because she has epilepsy. No, it's this medication is going to do this specific physiological thing, because these aren't stupid people. They can be educated. Just because somebody's uneducated because that's the way that they were raised in their country because they had to be, because it was unsafe or on the run, like I mentioned before, doesn't mean that they're inherently uneducated. So you can teach them about the body. You can say, well, epilepsy is caused by these specific physiological symptoms, and this is how this medication is going to help with that. And you also believe that this epilepsy is caused by demons, and that is okay. That is an okay thing to believe. We can't prove nor disprove that. So you can still do yours, but we suggest that you do this medication for these reasons, because this is our understanding of it. And so why not do these things in tandem? There is no negative to doing the cultural practices as well. There is some controversy because things like coin rubbing, and sometimes other cultures will do bloodletting, which I think is a whole other topic, is whether or not we should allow more physically damaging medical practices. But in this case, obviously it's a case by case basis, and in most cases, they're not hurting their children. So why not just do them in tandem, which is actually, Parker can speak to this a lot more because it's actually a really important part of naturopathy.
Integrative healthcare it's what I want to become, essentially. In an ideal world, I will be a naturopath and I will work with a medical doctor, an MD, in one clinic or in a referral system. So I'll technically have this is ideal, obviously. This is if my business works out exactly the way I want it to. Will that happen? Probably not, but it's what I want. And that is to encapsulate every possible angle for something. So if I don't have what this person needs, then the other person I'm working with can pick up the slack. And that is going to go into this idea that cultural differences does not equal uneducated. So we are able to look at this person, whether they're the same as me, different as me, and everybody's different, I guess, but I meant more on the like cultural background kind of level, like we've been talking about. And if I know that I'm not able to give this person what I think is best, then I have the ability to say, all right, we can work together in this area, but I'm going to need you to work with this person so that we can actually get you what you need. You know, it's the idea of like that doctor that was dealing with Leah looked at her and said, all right, it must be your parents' fault. Get out of there. I know what's best for you, but you know, because you're not doing it, I'm not going to not only not help you anymore, but I'm going to take you away from your support system. So that's a little scary. That's about the opposite, like exact opposite of what any doctor should ever be doing, unless it's actually abusive. But who lets doctors choose whether or not a family's abusive, really? Who gets to determine that?
Usually they're required to report what they deem as harmful behavior, and then the courts decide, depending on the state and the situation.
I wonder how well they actually looked into the case. Because how would you know that the parents just really kind of thought that their way was working and they didn't know any better, you know?
I think it's because they already had a preconceived notion about the people from Laos.
Okay, so like seeing similar cases in other situations.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just with the entirety of my belief systems, I believe in integrative everything to the max. So like even if I don't like a certain medication, I'll try to find something else first. But if that person ends up needing it, I'm not going to tell them no. I'm going to advise. I'm going to give them a pros and cons list and say, do what you will, because you can't force anybody to do anything. And again, as a teacher, or I'm not a teacher, as somebody who would like to fill that role eventually, it's going to be a matter of assessing everything in an enormous picture instead of just little bits and pieces of what I have. I'm never going to make that kind of an enormous assumption. That's crazy.
Yeah, I think that's what it all sort of comes down to is you're making assumptions about the way things should be, and you're allowing yourself to be put into a very narrow-minded view of this is the right way and this is the only right way and it has to be exactly this way and you can't add anything else in and you can't work with the person. They just have to know that this is the right thing and they just have to believe you wholehearted as the doctor. Like, yes, you should trust your doctor, but your doctor has to earn that trust.
Yeah. So you know the phrase like the trust the science that was really, really popular the last couple years.
Yeah.
I agree with it, but it's also really funny because it insinuates this kind of blind trust instead of earned trust per se. So it's used properly in a lot of places, but when I hear a lot of people say it, it's like they'll say, "Why is this happening?" And then the other person will go, "Trust the science," and I'm like, "Y'all, come on, that's not how that's supposed to be used here."
Yeah.
And I think this is a good situation of that.
Yeah. Especially when it comes to like integrative medicine and integrative science.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it goes both ways. It goes both ways.
Right.
Seriously. I will never stress that enough. There are so many alternative therapies that are just out of this, like, that's crazy. That's crazy. And people still do bloodlet, by the way.
Yeah.
It's still a practice, which is interesting. And I would like to talk about it at some point, but it's so odd to me.
Yeah. That would be a good future episode. So if anybody's listening and you want an episode of like breaking apart bloodletting and why people do it and what it means, let us know to the like 5 people who are going to listen to this podcast.
Yeah, Mom. Mom, I know you're listening.
Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad.
Yeah. Hi, Demeter.
Hi, my professor.
Oh, oops.
I think she's gonna love that. I'm gonna leave this in because, flattery. I'm just kidding.
That's cute.
But she's actually one of the best professors I've ever had.
Really? Do you go in person to see her, or are you doing online?
It's all online. Yeah. But she's really nice. She also, for anybody who is listening to the podcast and is interested in like medical anthropology and cultural medicine, her name is, let me just pull it up so I get the spelling right. Her name is Caroline Devane, Devane, and she has a TikTok and she talks a lot about cultural medicine and she's really cool. And if you like our podcast and you like what we talk about, especially this episode, I would highly suggest checking her out on TikTok because she's very smart and she is in the process of getting her PhD. So she's wicked smart. Yeah. So plug for Caroline Devane.
Well, it has been a while since we've actually been able to get on here and talk, and I'm glad that we did because it's been a while and we already kind of laid out why we're both working, going to school during the summer because, well, we really hate ourselves, don't we, to be doing this?
Yeah.
What is it for at this point? Anyway, sorry, I don't actually feel that way. I do take value in my work, but I also I lay on the floor and I do 45 minutes of studying and then I take a 10-minute nap on the floor. And then I do 45 of studying.
Do you like the Pomodoro?
Yeah.
I do that with my Pomodoro. I'll just be like for my 10 minutes.
I make a whole thing on the floor. I keep my noise canceling headphones on and I like lay there.
Nice. That's good stuff.
15. Actually, I do 45 and 15, not 45 and 10, because rounds out to an hour. But yeah, so if that gives you any picture into what we've both been doing recently, that is it. And we do like doing it a lot, but this is really important to both of us. So if you're bearing with us with it, thank you very much. Yes. And we will be back soon. Hopefully we'll pick up on Instagram. I got my child locks taken off of Instagram, so now I have free reign. Yay! It's because my phone storage was so full my phone wasn't working, but we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Anyways, thank you so much for joining us back here again.
I think we're gonna come back in strong. I'm gonna do, just for people who are wanting to know, I'm gonna be posting some more fitness content because I'm doing a new macro cycle right now. So I want to talk a little bit about that. And then we'll try to get more regular with the podcasts again. Yeah.
Mhm. They might be shorter just to start because I am doing one of my most dreaded classes at the moment, out of order.
Yes.
And I'm an unhappy camper.
Yes.
But I want to talk about my job. I want to talk about my experiences there. I know Emma's gonna have a bunch about hers too, because we're both in kind of cool little spots right now. W in chat. I didn't say that. We're gonna
That's not getting cut out. Don't even pretend.
No, chat clip that. Chat clip that. Yeah. So we will see you guys soon. Bear with us and thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We had so much fun creating this episode, and we hope you enjoy it as much as we do.
If you'd like to learn more, follow us on Instagram at studentsparks.ep, where we'll post all kinds of information and episode updates.
Don't forget to check in every other week to learn more about what it is like to be a student of neuroscience
and naturopathy.